I think it is finally time to talk about Roblox Jailbreak in 2022. If you've been watching my Roblox Jailbreak retrospective series, you might know that I have been putting some emphasis on 2022 and that it's a very special year in my opinion, because I've got a lot of things to say about this year. And I'm not entirely sure if most people are going to agree with me or not, because in terms of public reception for 2022, it's a pretty mixed bag, though there is a bit more positive reception for 2022, because of course 2022 was like the biggest year of Jailbreak of all time, because it was the year that added the biggest features that Jailbreak ever received in its lifespan. And of course we're going to be talking about those things in this video, but first let's set the stage for this year. We just came off of 2021, a pretty big year for Jailbreak, as it pretty much set course for what the game is now. Because that year really had an emphasis on seasons and limited vehicles, and fixing up the game big time, and just overall making the game better. Which of course, with the quality of life that we got in 2021, I think that did result with us getting a better game overall. It's just that before I did mention how this basically splintered the creative identity of Jailbreak big time. Overall, this is not the Jailbreak that you once knew. Jailbreak as a game has transformed so much, and it's really up for debate on whether that was a good thing or not. As someone who vastly prefers classic Jailbreak, I could honestly care less about the game changing for the sake of doing better in terms of performance, because things like seasons and limited vehicles and what you're about to see added in 2022 are merely products of Bedemo wanting more players to be engaged in the game more, just for the sake of making profit and money. And honestly, I would rather live in the timeline where Bedemo does not adopt these philosophies and just let the game die faster. So yeah, I think you get the picture already. Let's actually talk about the content that we got in 2022. And first off, we have a January update to talk about, which is pretty uncommon for Jailbreak. We've only had like 2 of these, including this one. And the only real addition that this update had was the revamp of the museum. Yeah, so right after the jewelry store got its revamp, the museum followed suit with a full visual overhaul. And so you notice how I said complete visual overhaul instead of revamp, because a visual overhaul is what this is. This is not a gameplay revamp. This is a visual change. Gameplay-wise, there is zero change to how it was before, and I just gotta be honest, the way the museum actually looks, it's honestly a bit worse. While there is quite a bit of open space for you to run inside the museum, it's honestly a bit underutilized in my opinion. Before the revamp, everything was quite compact and close together, and it was honestly a bit easier to navigate compared to the revamp. And with a revamp, it does give you the opportunity to make the place better and give it more things for you to steal and give it more visual flair to make it feel more like a museum. It overall feels the same way, if not a little bit worse. And they missed out on a big opportunity to give us more diverse and randomized escape puzzles. But instead, we have the exact same thing that we had before. I do know that there was supposed to be a basement for the museum revamp, but that had to be cut because of, I guess, deadline limitations, I guess. By definition, this is not a revamp of the museum. There is no new stuff to make the gameplay for the museum actually new. Calling it a museum revamp is outright misleading. At least with the jewelry store, it gave us new game to play because it gave us new jewelry store escape floors that we had to learn as we played. This does not do that one bit. It is laid out pretty much the exact same way, and it has the exact same puzzles with the exact same gameplay to it. It's not a revamp whatsoever. The gameplay of the museum is still good and intact, but I just wish they would do much more than this. And other than the museum, this update really didn't do that much. It just gave us new admin commands, retire some vehicles, gave us other new stuff. But overall, I can't say that this update was that much of a deal breaker, like it wasn't like offensively bad or anything. I can just say that it was a bit misleading on their part. So I guess we can move on to the next few updates, which honestly I really don't have that much to say about. I think for the February and March updates of 2022, Bedemo was very much continuing what they were doing in late 2021 of polishing the game up more and revamping a few things to make them even better. Like, we got the garage interface revamp, which thank God that this is the version of the garage that we're sticking with up until now. And we also got the Badger, which is a pretty nice beginner off-roader vehicle. And we also got the McLaren Formula 1 event, which I don't really have much to say about. It just gave us a new limited vehicle that does decently well, but it's a limited vehicle, so I don't care. Then we got the tow truck, and then we got a full openable mini-map where you can set waypoints on, and then you can customize custom horns to your car. Just a lot of inconsequential updates that didn't really add much, which may seem like a bad thing, and I do remember people complaining about this quite a bit back then. But it will all make sense once we cover the very next update. Because our next update is in April of 2022, which officially marks the second anniversary of the 2020 live event. And so you also think about how that live event happened like a year and a half after the 2018 live event. It was natural to assume that we were gonna get another one of these anytime soon. And we would be correct in assuming that because in the March update, we would get our first little teaser for what was to come in this year's live event. As in the March update thumbnail, we would see an anagram that gave us the phrase, "look to the sky," and once we look to the sky during nighttime, we would see little meteorites flying through space in the night sky. And so the hype train for the 2022 live event began. In terms of like what I remember from the hype cycle for this live event, I honestly saw a little bit less hype going around compared to like the 2020 live event, because I feel like during this time is when public enthusiasm for Jailbreak started to very much wane. As I said before, the things that they did in 2020 and 2021 definitely alienated a lot of veteran players from the game, and so because of that, public retention for Jailbreak has definitely dropped big time. It's not like the game during this time was doing poorly, nothing like that, not at all. It's just that compared to how it was, this live event definitely was not going to be as successful as the previous one. But anyways, following the first few teasers and coming up to the actual live event itself, we gotta look at a few teaser images as to what we could expect in the update itself. One of them looked to be some sort of road tunnel, and especially during this time, people were constantly clamoring for a new map expansion to be added to the game, so it was kind of a giveaway, at least for me, that we were gonna get some type of map expansion. And so, on April 2nd, 2022, the event would start. At first, Asimo and BadCC warn us of a new imminent threat that's gonna hit Jailbreak in the form of meteors, which is not all that of a surprise considering they basically gave that away to us. But aside from that, we get our first meteor touchdown, in which Asimo and BadCC actually instruct us to keep on jumping on the meteor to crack it open to get our reward for this live event. Now that's kind of neat, requiring the combined effort of everyone in your server to complete a task to get a reward for participating in the live event. I feel like that's pretty cool, and I feel like that was a testbed for what was to come in potential future events. And then after that, the real meteor shower begins, because the entire Jailbreak map pretty much gets decimated. The bank gets destroyed by a big meteor, the drawbridge gets destroyed by the meteor. No, not the drawbridge. No, not the drawbridge! And then once everything goes a little quiet, the big boy comes in, and it pretty much destroys the entire mountain range on the north side of the Jailbreak map. Holy shit, this is the end. The more meteors crash down on the map, the more static envelops our screen until the only thing we can see on our screen is static, which basically forces us to join back into the game to see what the actual update has to offer. But before that, we did see some new dialogue from a newly introduced character that made his debut in this event, who states that this attack was no accident and that he will rule Jailbreak. Whoever this unknown signal is would not be revealed until much later, but once the dust settles, a new world will be unveiled to us in the form of Crater City. Won't you look at that? A brand new city. There are now 2 cities on the Jailbreak map, and that is something I thought that was next to impossible. And other than that, the size of the Jailbreak map has basically doubled. You compare that to the 2019 map expansion, where that only expanded the map outwards of like 25%. It was very dinky and small, and there wasn't really anything to do in the new landmass, whereas this, it doesn't just feel big, it is big. Couple that with the new robbery that this update gave us in the form of the casino. And come on, what do you want me to say about the casino that hasn't already been said about it? It's just overall a very solid robbery that has a lot of steps you need to do to actually rob the place, and has a ton of depth with cop interactivity. You can fight them, outsmart them, you can do a lot with them. And especially recently, I've come to realize that the casino is a very easy robbery to learn. Like, I've been playing the game with some friends as of late, and I think now they pretty much know the ins and outs of the casino now. I guess that is because it's a fairly linear robbery. You find the code, get in the elevator, go to the security, disable the security, go down to the vaults, crack open the vault, steal the money, get out of there through the roof. It's very easy to learn, in my opinion. And it's very surprising that even though it is very easy to learn, it is still very fun to do. Like, in terms of fighting cops, you compare it to the bank, where cops can easily get in the vault and arrest everyone instantly. This one, you actually need to fight criminals to arrest them, or you need to fight cops as a criminal, and it's very fun. As a cop, there's no real way to cheese the casino. You need to play the game as a cop to arrest the criminals. And as a criminal, you really need to think about the best possible way to get out of the casino with the least amount of cop interaction whatsoever. I guess the only bit of criticism I can give to the casino is that the elevator can be extremely janky. If you enter the elevator a little bit too late, just as it's about to change floors, you can glitch out really badly and be stuck in the empty void room outside of the actual elevator model. And this can be really fucking annoying, but I'll talk about bugs like this later. But other than that, in terms of criticism towards how the casino is thought out, maybe there could be some randomized vaults for it. But even then, I think the vault that it already has is fine enough to stand on its own. So really, I'm not sure what to say about it. It's just a really solid, constructed, and thought out robbery that I really don't have much to say about. It's just really, really good. More robberies like this, please, and less robberies like the cargo ship or the bank truck. Now for everything else in this update. Other than things like Crater City and the casino and the whole map expansion, the map did get a whole lot of updating. Of course, we got a new drawbridge, which I assume got revamped because I guess Asimo was just not happy with the way it looked, so now it's updated and it does look a lot better. And also, this drawbridge goes along with the new figure 8 that goes around the entire map. You betcha, a full uninterrupted stretch of road for you to race around in, and it's honestly a pretty nice addition to the map. And with this, a lot of the established roads on the map did have to be reconstructed for this, which I think was a nice sacrifice. And there were some things that got moved, like some vehicle spawn locations, and the power plant got moved. And we also got a full revamp of the Volcano Criminal Base, which is very nice because there is a lot more room for you to drive around in, and you can actually spawn your vehicle in it, which is very nice. And now there's a total of 4 ways to get in and out of it, which is really nice against camping cops. But yeah, overall, the map changes we got in this update were fucking cracked. These were awesome. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have my criticisms for it. For example, you remember Jetpack Mountain? That is completely gone, and ergo, a lot of the south side map expansion is pretty much eviscerated off of the face of the map. It's a little sad in my opinion, because it makes it feel like that map expansion really didn't amount to anything if a good chunk of it is essentially just gone now. Of course, we still have quite a bit of the landmarks from that map expansion, it just sucks that a good chunk of it is gone. And as for the north side map expansion, it does feel a little bit too empty. I know that's kind of the philosophies behind these kinds of map expansions. Of course, they feel empty at first, but over time they get filled with content. It's just that with the exception of the casino, at first it was very transparent that they really didn't have much to fill this in with. Was there a real reason why the racetrack had to come back for this map expansion? No, I don't think so. It feels like to me that they just kind of had that laying around in their files, so they just decided to plop that there for the sake of having it there to fill out the new map. I mean, hell, it was removed months later because I assume Bedimo knew that, hey, we kinda don't need this, and it's also taking up part count on our map, so we're just gonna take it out of here. And even if this new part of the map wasn't really that dense or populated enough, it honestly kind of felt fresh and new and sort of melancholy, and I kind of liked it because of that. And because I know that Bedimo plans their updates months in advance, I knew that this was just a teaser for big things to eventually come to the game. This period of being a Jailbreak fan felt very nice. It felt like we were harkening back to the days of like 2020, where we constantly got like game-changing updates that were of a very high quality constantly. It was very exciting. So overall, in terms of the live event and what we got after the event, this has to be one of Bedimo's best updates they've done with Jailbreak in its lifespan. So with this being one of the first updates of 2022, you would expect all of the following updates to kind of follow along with this bar of quality, right? Alright, so private jets are up next. However, before the next update rolled around, Bedimo did announce that they were hiring a third member for Bedimo. Of course, we all know that Bedimo has always been run by two people, BadCC and Asimo3089, so hiring a third member seemed really out of left field. And this new member would be Critstix, who would go on to contribute heavily to Jailbreak. I'm just mentioning this now because this Critstix character will be very important for this year's string of updates, so keep them in the back of your head, yeah? Private jets are weird, but kind of cool. Basically, these things function as your form of fast travel, because the map is very big now, and now we need a way to travel between the north and south sides very easily. And compared to vehicles, these things get the job done very easily. One round trip costs like $5,000, which in today's Jailbreak economy really is not that much, so it is a very easy way to get between both points on the map. But of course, as someone who does own very high performance in-game vehicles, this doesn't really mean that much to me, but I do know that it is very useful for beginner players. And I do suppose that it is a very nice way to escape from cops. Not a bad feature, not a bad feature at all, a very welcome addition. Though I will say that network lag does exist, and it definitely will hinder your private jet experience, so if you have a less than decent internet connection, expect to not be using these that much. And so let's see, other things of this update. We got new Crater City locations. We got a garage in Crater City now. There's a gun shop in Crater City that has been always useful for me. And the $1 million dealership got moved to Crater City. Oh, never mind, it got changed in the next update. What was the point of that? Anyway, now we can talk about the bank revamp. So you know how I said about the museum that was not a revamp, it was just a visual overhaul? We can say the same thing about what they did to the bank here, because in this update, they advertised this as a bank revamp because, of course, in the live event, it got decimated by that meteor. But this is not a revamp. Again, Bedimo, do you know what a revamp means? But in terms of, like, what they did do to the bank, can I just ask, what was the point of this? Because in terms of, like, how the bank is structured and thought out in the core gameplay of the bank, what changed? What needed to be changed? Because it's not like what they did with the jewelry store where they revamped every single floor that was in the jewelry store beforehand. Every single floor in the bank is the exact goddamn same. With the exception of the new floor that they added, which is upper management, which actually takes advantage of some new stuff that they did to the bank. This bank floor is the only bank floor to take us to the upper floors of the bank. And it's also the only bank floor to be on the upper levels, which is kind of dumb. You would think that with this new gameplay mechanic in the bank, they would take advantage of it in the future, but no, they don't, for no reason. And honestly, I just gotta say that upper management is one of my least favorite bank floors. The way it is constructed is very just bland, and it's not very good. It was made solely for the purpose of being the upper bank floor, with no regard of being good on its own, and I don't really like it because of that. Gameplay-wise, the bank is the exact same as it was before, and always has been for the past 5 years at this point. And I don't know about y'all, but there's this one game that I'm thinking of that I can't really remember the name of that had a major revamp to all of its robberies, including the bank, and the bank was made so much better because of it. Maybe Jailbreak should take some notes from that, but I guess not because I can't really remember the name of it right now. I don't know, something about a city, I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking crazy, but I think the bank could use some heavy retooling. It's just that this revamp missed a lot of opportunities to do that. I mean, even now, Isimo has talked about the potential of rethinking bank busting and how the bank works, so why couldn't that just be done here instead of potentially now? There's just a lot of missed opportunities and potential in these robbery revamps, in my opinion. And I just gotta say, the existence of the casino kind of makes the bank a lot worse because visually, the bank is severely incongruent with the casino, and I guess vice versa. And by principle and by its idea, the casino is kind of the same thing. You steal money from a vault and then you get out of there, but it does it so much better, so why should I rob the bank when the casino is right there and much better and more fun? And even if you want to say that cash payouts are the motivation for you to do robberies, the casino is one of, if not the most highest paying robberies in the game, so what's the point of the bank even being here? So yeah, for this update, other than private jets, I was heavily disappointed by this bank revamp, or lack thereof. So I guess we should move on to the next update, which is one of the biggest game changers in Jailbreak's history, and I'm sure we all know why, we all know it's coming, we all know what we're talking about. We added the beach town. We also added Season 10, and we revamped the criminal lair, and we added Radiant Green. Oh, what's that? You thought it was gonna talk about trading? No, you'd be mistaken, because trading actually came in the very next update, because for some ungodly reason, Bidimo just loves splitting these updates into two. For some reason, I don't know why they keep on doing this. I feel that this is a much more prevalent issue in 2023, but Bidimo just keeps on doing this. They keep on splitting major updates into two parts instead of condensing everything into one very complete, compact update. I really don't understand why, and I guess you could say that it's about deadlines and limitations and constraints, but those are things that they put upon themselves, and they could always, you know, delay updates. They can always do that, but they don't for no reason. But enough beating around the bush. Let's talk about trading, because this has been one of the most highly requested features and one of the most worked on features in Jailbreak's history. So of course, let's talk about it. As I said before, trading was one of the most highly anticipated and requested features to come into Jailbreak, and the hype for it was through the roof. I didn't mention this before, but leading up to the release of the Tomb, Bidimo actually created an entirely new Twitter account dedicated to the Jailbreak Collector. You know the Jailbreak Collector, you know the guy that you give a lot of your robbery thingamajigs to in the volcano base? Yeah, that guy. I guess in Jailbreak canon, that's a stupid sentence, he is the one that canonically found the tomb and eventually the trade island. He is very much the Jailbreak archaeologist that finds a lot of things that relate to upcoming updates. I don't really know what the point of having him find these things are, but I guess it's fun for Bidimo to do, so I won't knock them for that. And that eventually led to the release of the trade island and trading itself, so let's talk about it. The first thing worth noting is that trading in Jailbreak is completely separate from the main game. In order to trade, you need to go to the trade island, which is in a completely separate place, far away from the main Jailbreak map. That way trading doesn't get in the way of actual Jailbreak gameplay for players, which is very nice. And the trade island itself doesn't really have any gameplay. It is basically just a hangout place place where people trade and show off and test cars. It's very nice. But what about trading itself? How does it exactly work? All you really need to do is go up to a player and click on the trade prompt to send them a trade request, and it's up to them if they want to accept or decline the request, and that also works vice versa. So what about actually trading? Well, the good thing about this system is that nothing can really go out of balance. For example, if you're offering someone a beam hybrid and they offer you a challenger, the trade cannot go through because these items' values are not balanced. The values of each party's set of items need to be relatively equal for the trade to go through. It is really impossible to trade a really rare high-performance vehicle for something really cheap. This way, there's no real method of just straight up giving someone a very rare car for completely free. Couple this system with how long it takes each party to accept the trade, the game wants you to be very aware of each party's items and what their value is. So with all these failsafes and restrictions in mind, I think Bedemo has built a very strong system for trading to where pretty much no one can get scammed. If you think you did get scammed, chances are you probably didn't, or you got socially engineered somehow. And I personally think we can thank CritSticks for a lot of the development that went into trading. It occurs to me, at least, that CritSticks was brought on board to develop a lot of the very complex systems that we see in Jailbreak to this day. Things like trading and Hyperchromes and NPCs and crew battles are heavily implied to have been heavily worked on by CritSticks. And because trading has a very well-designed and built system for it, I just gotta commend CritSticks for it. I like this a lot. And now this opens up a new world for Jailbreak because now this is an entire free market, and now this will draw in players that like free market trading. It even drew me in at first because it really brought me back to the days of like Rocket League trading, if anyone is familiar with that. Because before Epic Games bought Psyonix and ruined Rocket League forever, we had crates in trading and the world was at peace and everything was fine. And I was very avid in that world. Like, I still have my Rocket League account, and I still have my items, and I'm very proud of what I've accumulated. And Jailbreak trading really brought me back to those days in, like, 2018 to 2019, and it felt very nice. So overall, as a feature, trading in Jailbreak is a net positive. This should be in the game, and this does increase longevity for the game's performance. However, I do have one huge thing to say. You know how in my season video where I talked about how bringing in the season revamp basically clouded Bedemo's vision for what they would do for the game in terms of the future, where Bedemo saw the cash pool and decided to run with that and make as much money off of the community as possible and made that kind of a priority for the game? Think of that issue, but times that by 10 and put your dick in a pencil sharpener, because holy hell, what trading did for the game and what it did to Bedemo's vision for the game, oh god, oh fuck. You know how I said that trading brought in a new demographic of people that very much like free market trading? That audience also favors free market trading over gameplay. This demographic is big, and it covers a large portion of the Jailbreak community. You see this in how a lot of people mentioned that trading brought in a ton of longevity for the game's performance, and how many people ask Asimo to add more cosmetics. Even Asimo has admitted this many times. And then you look closely at some of the updates that came out after trading was introduced, and you start to realize something. Because after trading, we got Hyperchromes, we had a full safe revamp, we had more and more limited vehicles, and we had the CEO rewards, and then we had crew battle rewards, and then seasons are a part of this issue too, and then the safe rewards rotate a bunch of times and retire vehicles, and generally there are more items in the game than ever because of people wanting more cosmetics. Naturally, you would not assume that this is a bad thing, because at least the game is still being updated, we're still getting new gameplay, and it should be good, right? 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 Nope. Not at all. The bar of quality beyond this point just keeps on going downhill, and I'll get to that later, but their resources are kind of being stretched thin because they're adding much more cosmetics than they ever have before. And I'm saying all this not as a game dev. I have no idea how long it takes or how much effort it requires to add all these cosmetics, but I would naturally assume that it's not easy to add all of these, right? Like, for example, vehicles. They've said before that adding new vehicles is not an easy task because you need to do the math on how fast each vehicle goes, and you need to make every texture apply to that certain vehicle, and that is a lot of textures you need to go through to map onto vehicles. And even if they're made by the community, that does not mean that they're easy to implement. Like, I doubt it's just a drag and drop system to actually put it into the game's files. I'm just saying this to make you imagine what if they put some of these resources that are being put towards cosmetics and put them into actual gameplay. But instead, they add more limited vehicles and more items and more just general junk to the game instead of bringing actual gameplay to the table, because most of the player base is clamoring for more cosmetics because they want a fucking profit in trading. I thought seasons were bad enough at clouding Bedimo's vision for what Jailbreak is, but trading just increased it tenfold. I fucking hate this! I will not think for 1 second that when trading was introduced, it was just a coincidence that updates just gradually got worse. There is no coincidence! This is the reason! And I suppose while we're on the topic of jailbreak trading, can I just say that I have had the worst experience with general jailbreak traders? Because these people are for some reason allergic to the idea of social constructs. Because, for example, if I have my trading card up saying that I want something, they will completely ignore that and automatically give me a trade request as if I was interested in what they were offering. Like, no, I am not interested in your 7 brulees, I don't want them, did you even read my trading card? Oh, clearly you didn't. It's just stuff like this that makes me think this is the audience y'all are catering towards. Was it really that worth it, Bedimo? And I guess while we're on the topic of some of the weirdness of the jailbreak community, especially during this time, some of the community creators in the community were some of the most butthurt individuals I've ever seen on this planet. I actually have multiple videos uploaded that cover these kinds of issues that were uploaded during this time period, that covered some of the weird toxicity that was thrown towards SharkyCat109, the one who made the Celsior and the Bloxy. Because when the Celsior was made the grand prize of Season 8, a lot of other community creators were mad about it because they did not like the quality of the Celsior's model, I suppose. And the same thing happened with the Bloxy. And can I just ask everyone, what the fuck was up with the weirdness towards model quality during this time? Because one, it's not like most of the vehicles in Jailbreak at this time looked any better, and two, the model quality is kind of irrelevant to the point of playing through the season, because in my opinion, I don't think it's worth being upset towards grand prize winners, and I don't think it's worth dogpiling people who do think the model looks good. And third of all, this is a fucking video game. Why are we worried about vehicle model quality rather than the actual goddamn video game? Where the fuck are your priorities? Whew. Had to blow off some steam. Anyways, Hyperchromes are up next. Fuck these things. But first, let's just give it a fair shake for a second. How exactly do Hyperchromes work? Well, for nearly every robbery in the game, there is a Hyperchrome associated with that robbery that you can unlock. The bank has the green Hyperchrome, the jewelry store has the diamond Hyperchrome, the museum has the orange Hyperchrome, Tomb has red, casino has pink, etc, etc. The way you get them is pretty simple. You just need to rob a location, and in the newly introduced robbery bonus wheel, you have a very small chance at getting a Hyperchrome. And when I say small, I mean it's a very small chance. To get your first Hyperchrome, you only have a 0.446 thousandths of a percent to get one. And oh boy, that's just on the first level, because you have 5 levels of this shit, and it only gets harder on every single level. And because these are leveled, this is basically the Jailbreak endgame progression system. I guess it's a form of prestige, if you will, but it's done in the worst fucking way possible. Because to get a level 5 Hyperchrome, you only have a 0.07% chance of getting one. And that's just for one Hyperchrome, because if you want to get the end game reward of Jailbreak, you need to get all 8 of your Hyperchromes up to level 5. And what is the reward, you may ask? The Hypershift. A Hyperchrome that cycles throughout all of the level 5 Hyperchromes you've gotten so far. Now, I support Pride with all my might. I have tons of queer friends, but this is where I draw the fucking line. This is the way you quote-unquote beat Roblox Jailbreak according to other high-level players? What the fuck? What is this? What in the hell am I looking at? This is the first feature that Chris6 implemented by himself, and I just gotta say, what a goddamn waste, because this is a progression system based off of luck. Those things don't go together. Luck-based things and progression don't go together. The ways of quote-unquote hyper-grinding are completely moronic in my opinion, because I only see this as a method to gamble your goddamn time away. And quite literally, by definition, is a waste of time. Hyperchromes are not something for you to actively seek out. They're merely just a secondary reward for you playing the game. And I guess when you look at it like that, they're not so bad, but at the same time, this just sucks as a progression system. And even if you're going for them as you casually play the game, you're not gonna get a hypershift at all if that's the case. I guess if you do have a hypershift and you did grind for that and you earned it yourself, more power to you. I am not at the level you are at, but me personally, I've got better shit to do with my life. So overall, Hyperchromes were a goddamn mistake. They were a complete dud. I hate these things with a burning passion. And it's not even like I can come up with a solution to potentially fix Hyperchromes. I just generally want these things out of the game. I think the game would just be 100% better if they did not have Hyperchromes. And it also creates a very weird issue where future robberies cannot have a new Hyperchrome because it'll interfere with the progression towards Hypershift. So yeah, generally I just think Hyperchromes suck. I think we can move on. And the next update isn't actually so bad because it brought in the safe revamp. Finally, I was wondering when they were eventually going to do this. Because before the safe revamp, the only real update that safes received was the vault safe. And when did that come out? The winter update of 2017. Jesus Christ, it's been a long time. And with how many jailbreak things have been revamped up until now, I honestly think it was kind of late to revamp safes, but better late than never, I suppose. And with this safe revamp, we got a surplus of new items for us to unlock. And like the previous safe system, you would assume that these safes are simply just another way to unlock these items, right? Nah, because now we have full-on gambling. You can gamble your in-game cash on these safes to maybe earn something good from them. Many different people have many different viewpoints and opinions on gambling systems like this, but again, as someone who was avid in Rocket League trading and crates, I'm not gonna knock it that hard. At least compared to other gambling systems in other video games, Jailbreak has it very safe because you are gambling your in-game money away and not something like Robux or real money, which is very nice. And I feel like this was done for the people that have way too much money in their Jailbreak bank account. You know, the people that have like millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. So this does give them a way of spending a ton of their money at once, and I feel like it works pretty well. It definitely gave me a hard time because it cleared out my cash very, very quickly. And for some reason, for all the time before the crime safe was revamped, I could never get those Japanese tire letters for some reason. I have no idea why. Maybe just bad luck, but I don't know. So the safe revamp was generally okay, but it definitely didn't help what I talked about before of trading having a helping hand and very much altering Bedemo's vision for what the game should be, and adding so many cosmetics to the game to the point where it distracts from the actual gameplay. There is one other important thing in this update, and that is the revamp of trains, and unlike the museum and the bank, this one actually authentically revamps it, I'd say. With the exception of the passenger train, because that was generally kept the same, but I feel like it did have some missed potential. But the cargo train actually did get revamped in that the red carts are now randomized. They work very similarly to the bank and jewelry store floors, so you kind of know what to expect, but there is a random set of red carts that range in difficulty, with the wooden one having a bunch of lasers and is typically the hardest, and the default one is the easiest. So now if there's multiple train carts on the cargo train, you're going to want to look out for which one is the easiest to rob to have an easier time robbing the cargo train. There's not a lot of revamp, but it is something, and it's more than what the museum and bank did, which I can very much appreciate. And it also helps that the travel distance of both trains has been extended outwards to Crater City, which is very nice. So this update ranges from pretty okay to pretty decently good, very much a stark contrast from the Hyperchrome update. Hopefully they can keep up this momentum. Oh, well, I guess this is a stark contrast from how pretty decently safes were revamped, because now we are continuing revamped very outdated things in Jailbreak, and this is a very bad case of that, because airdrops have now been revamped with NPC guards. This is another one of Crit6's contributions to the game, because they were the one to suggest the idea of NPC guards, which on paper is not a bad idea. In fact, I would say it's a great idea, because this is something that I've been wanting in the game for so long now. I mean, if you really think about it, NPCs in a game like this where combat is very gun-oriented seems like a no-brainer. This is something that I've been wanting for so long. Like, I think back in 2020, I've always had an idea for like a yacht robbery where you steal a vault from it, but then you have these NPC guards holding off the vault, and I just saw so much potential in an idea like this. So you best believe when NPCs were announced to be coming to the game, I was ecstatic. I was kicking my feet off the bed, and I was so excited. And I was so sad to see them absolutely fucking fumble these things. These NPCs are not the typical mindless bots that you fight in any other video game like you expect. These are player bots. Bots that are supposed to simulate what a player would do in a situation, which because of this game's combat, that normally means they're going to shoot at you and laser you until you are fucking dead. And couple that with the fact that these guys are very powerful, because the guns they're using have the exact same damage as any other ordinary player shooting at you. Which means if there's a bodyguard holding a revolver, they can kill you in 5 fucking hits. And that also means enforcers and chasers can absolutely decimate you in close range. These guys are not fun to fight at all. And these guys come in waves, because once you start collecting an airdrop, these guys will drop down and start shooting at you. And the amount of NPCs that drop down depends on the crate difficulty. But that point is very null, because if you're collecting these solo, regardless of difficulty, you are going to fucking die. I've only had very few experiences where I defeat all of the Wave 1 NPCs on level 1 airdrops, but other than that, you cannot solo these whatsoever. You're gonna need a team to take these down. And once I kind of realized that that is how these things are designed, and that you are punished for taking these things on solo, I then realized that these things are just so fucking stupid. Why is it designed like that? Because please, can someone point to anywhere else in the game where it has this kind of design, where the game punishes you for not having a team? The only things I can think of are like the museum, because if you're the only one in the museum and everyone else is dead, you can't get out, because it requires 2 people to get in and out of the museum. And I guess the tomb, because you need 3 people to get in it, but it's not really punishing you for not having a team with you, right? Pretty much everything else in the game, aside from crews, I guess, can be played entirely solo. Teamwork has always been an available option to you. That's how it's always been. And I really think the NPC update is the origin point for this really stupid idea that Jailbreak is a team-based game. It has never been a team-based game. You have always been able to play it solo. That's how it always should be. If you want a team-based game, go play a team-based game like TF2 or Marvel Rivals or something, because that is simply not what Jailbreak is, but for some reason, people that are heavily involved in the development of updates and people in the community want to bring out this agenda that Jailbreak is a team-based game when it has never been. You can play as a team, and yes, the game does reward some teamwork, but the game doesn't outright pretty much force you to do that, right? Robberies like the museum or the tomb require multiple people to actually enter the robberies because they want to limit the amount of people that can get in those robberies, because those are some of the highest paying robberies in the game. Giving criminals the ability to do these robberies solo would vastly accelerate the amount of money criminals make on a daily basis, and we need some type of balance to not make that happen. And airdrops are just really bad because they don't just force you to be a part of a team, they punish you for not being part of a team, which just sucks. That would work in a game where most players are a part of the team all the time, but Jailbreak is not that game, and airdrops suffer because of that. And fighting the NPCs themselves is really not fun. They are just giant bullet sponges that laser you heavily, and it's just overall not fun. These are not how these should be handled. In terms of ways to remediate the shittiness of airdrops and NPCs, maybe have NPCs do a lot more than just shoot at you. There's just many other games out there that do these kinds of NPCs much better. Like Halo, for example, has stellar enemy AI. I have heard that games like The Last of Us and Alien Isolation have incredible enemy AI, and even the Half-Life games are praised for how they design levels and place enemy NPCs. Just a few things that Badimo could have took some notes from when designing these NPCs. You know, for some reason, I do remember them doing that down the road, but I don't know. And one more thing with airdrops and NPCs that I want to mention. When they first released, these things were laggy. Like, really, really laggy. I think it had something to do with the layered clothing technology that they had with the NPCs, but for some reason, whenever these guys popped up, they would lag out your game a fuck ton, and it was terrible. And even aside from airdrops, the game during this time was severely unpolished. Like, late 2022 was some of the worst Jailbreak gameplay I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing in my fucking life. Bug after bug after bug, it was incredibly annoying and frustrating, and it just straight up pissed me off. And airdrops really did not help with that because, of course, NPCs like this are pretty advanced for Roblox, so of course they're gonna be pretty laggy, but to this degree, it's just really bad. So overall, I just gotta say, airdrops were a waste of effort in my opinion. These fucking suck, and I just wish they were handled so much better. But anyways, let's move on from airdrops and NPCs, because it can't possibly get worse than this, right? What could we possibly be looking forward to now? In October, we didn't really get anything. They just revamped a few military vehicles. They did some adjusting to some other vehicles and tasers and handcuffs. We didn't really get much of anything, but then after that, we have 5 days of vehicles. Oh boy. If y'all watched my 2021 video, you know how much I praised that year's 5 days of vehicles because it was genuinely one of the best Jailbreak updates of all time. Whereas this is not. because I am not fucking with y'all when I say that I legit can't remember a single addition that this update had other than the vehicles. Looking at the Jailbreak Wiki update log, it definitely did do a lot of fixing, but from what I remember, it didn't really fix a lot of the issues that I was talking about before of the game being really unpolished. The game was still severely frustrating and not fun to play because of the abhorrent bugs. I guess some things it did do was add a bunch of quality of life to trading and move the military base, fix a lot of customization bugs, and I guess a lot of other things that I really don't remember. It was especially during this time where I was mentally clocking out of Jailbreak because the game was being so frustrating to play, and I just couldn't really find myself to care about the game that much during this time. It wasn't like I wasn't playing the game during this time. I finished Season 12, but my enthusiasm for the game was definitely waning. But other than bugs, let's go over the vehicles that we received in this update. And we didn't get a whole lot compared to 2021. First off, we got the Shell Mark V, which is a decent vehicle, but I do have to ask, what was the point of this vehicle again? Because the price is not that far off from the La Matador, and I really don't see any other purpose for it for beginner players, so I'm really confused on its addition. Next, we got the Fire Truck Revamp, and I guess by extension I should mention the Ambulance Revamp too. It was about time that these vehicles get revamped because they were a part of the last bunch of vehicles that weren't updated to fit the current Jailbreak style. So it is pretty nice to see these vehicles get revamped and polished up a bit. Next up, we have the Desert Crawler, which is an interesting addition in my opinion, because this vehicle was intended to be a part of Season 11 Toys and Collectibles, the season that the Bloxy won for Grand Prize, which I already talked about before because people were being overbearingly toxic towards Starkey Cat 109, and a large part of this subsect of the audience wanted this vehicle to win Grand Prize for Season 11, and so it got added here, so now no one can complain, huh? This is something that Bedemo does quite a bit of shutting people up with a new vehicle, as they did with the Concept, because people constantly wanted the Torpedo to come back, and here is a vehicle that is just as good as a Torpedo. And now with the Javelin, which is literally the Torpedo again. I think everyone can be honest here and say that, yeah, this is the Torpedo just with an updated model. Its selling point was that it literally had Torpedo-like performance. That is literally what they said. And its model is based off of the Koenigsegg Jesko, just like how the Torpedo is based off of the Koenigsegg Agera RS. And its price is relatively similar, and it was out for a mere 48 hours. It was very blatant that this was the Torpedo successor, and the method for which Bedemo was to make Torpedo beggars shut the fuck up. And when you look at it like that, which is most likely the viewpoint that Bedemo had when they made the Javelin, it is a tad bit cynical in my opinion, just being honest. So yeah, this year's 5 Days of Vehicles better than 2020's 5 Days of Vehicles, but not better than 2021's, because 2021's is honestly kind of cracked, and I doubt any future 5 Days of Vehicles is ever gonna match that bar of quality. So let's look back at what we've had so far. So far, we have had one objectively really solid, great update. We've had a decently good update with really bad ramifications, a lot of miscellaneous mid-updates, and 2 updates that are offensively terrible, like I fucking hate them. But surely the winter update can save us all, right? Right? Well, for some perspective, we're gonna need to go back to April of 2022, because then Asimo hosted a Discord Q&A where he said something very interesting.
So will there be more story to the game?
Yes, we want more story to the game, and we kind of hinted at that with our live event. We're going to introduce a new character that will be involved in future updates. We're just not quite ready to show you who he is yet.
Ooh. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
More Jailbreak lore.
Yeah, we got to do more of that.
That's right, we're gonna get some more in-depth storytelling and lore. That unknown signal we saw in the live event, that was leading up to something very big. And we even saw this effort of more in-depth world building in other updates. Like, as I said, the museum collector is the one who canonically found the trade island, and he also is the one who canonically found Hyperchromes. Hyperchromes of which come from the meteor that came down in the 2020 live event. Airdrops even did the same thing, because on the crates themselves, you can read the words, property of the boss. Who is the boss? And even Asimo himself hinted that we were gonna find out who the boss is in this year's winter update.
Who caused the in the life event, because we didn't get to know.
Oh, yes. You will find out soon. He is a new character in Jailbreak lore, and he's involved with a couple big content updates we'll have in the next year. Maybe this winter you'll learn a bit more about him.
As someone who surprisingly has a very avid passion for storytelling and writing, I was very intrigued to see what Bedimo had up their sleeve. I was very interested to see what kind of story Bedimo wanted to tell in the world of Jailbreak, because beforehand, while things did happen, and there were ARGs and puzzles that have kind of lore significance, nothing actually happened. Stories were not told. This was an opportunity for Bedimo to play their deck and show what they're capable of in terms of writing. And so what was one of their first moves when it came to establishing a concrete story in the Jailbreak world? What the fuck am I looking at? Is that a text document straight up telling me who the boss is? What? Yikes, this is pretty bad, because this goes against one of the most fundamental principles when it comes to writing anything, and that's show, don't tell. Don't pretend the audience is stupid and actually show us the things that have happened. And the explanation itself is absolutely devoid of any kind of substance whatsoever. Like, let me just read this out. The CEO, also known as the boss by his own criminal turned henchman, was born into a life of crime. He was cunning and ruthless as a small-time criminal. But he was not content with just money. He craved power, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get that power. So we're just gonna skip over why he wants that power, right? And what exactly that power is? Using his exceptional power, he built custom tools and amassed an army of henchmen to carry out crimes never dreamed up before. He became a supervillain against criminals and police alike. Especially in today's cultural climate, I think the idea of him being a supervillain is fucking stupid. This does not need to be a story of heroes and villains, because we have enough of that already, and that just does not fit what Jailbreak is. This is not a fucking superhero Marvel story. This is cops versus criminals, and this is fucking stupid. And then after that, the document calls back to a bunch of update release dates that don't mean anything, and this whole document can just be thrown into the fucking trash, because this tells us that the CEO is not a character whatsoever. This is one of the biggest misconceptions I've seen across the Jailbreak community, and it's that the CEO is not a character. He has none of the fundamental principles that make up what a character in a story should be. He has zero motivation, and there isn't even a motivation told to us, which is simply just fucking embarrassing. And he has no core beliefs around a theme, and that's just, what the fuck, what the fuck is this? This is supposed to be a story. This is lore. What is this? The CEO is not a believable character in a story. He is simply a cardboard cutout that can be replaced for fucking anyone. There is no reason for his existence. And it's funny that I even mention a story, because there is no story to Jailbreak. There is no story being told within the world of Jailbreak? Like, what is the theme being conveyed here? What is the message that Badimo is trying to tell us with this story? The most story you can extrapolate from Jailbreak was made on complete fucking accident. You know all the natural disasters that happen on the Jailbreak map? I see that as an allegory for traumatic events in one's life, because at the end of the day, the map is still here, and the players of Jailbreak are still here, and the citizens are still here. Even though we don't fucking see them, they're just kind of conveyed to exist. And that kind of gives a positive message that you can prevail no matter what happens. But this attempt at a more grandiose narrative and story with the CEO is fucking barbaric and laughable. This is stupid. It is for these reasons that it really bothers me when people talk about and try to dissect the story of Roblox Jailbreak as if it has a story, because there is no story being told. The only things that are happening are the literal things that are happening within the plot of Jailbreak's lore, rather than things of substance and meaning with themes and characters and things that make up a story. Jailbreak simply does not have that. It bothers me that people try to paint a picture that Jailbreak has a story like that when it simply does not. And if you want to tell me that, oh, what the hell are you on about? The story in Jailbreak is no big deal. Why are you complaining? I see it as a much worse thing. This completely spits in the face of the art of storytelling. And the fact that Asimo promised us lore, which implies the existence of a story, and this is what we get, is just so fucking stupid in my opinion. Again, as someone who has a passion for these things, I hate this. I hate this squandered opportunity for Jailbreak to have its own story. And you know what? Let's bring it back to Fortnite, because Fortnite has a story and Jailbreak is oh so influenced by Fortnite. And Fortnite overall has a pretty messy and cluttered and fucking stupid story, but there is something good in it. You know how Jules is the daughter of Midas in canon? There is actually a story being told there of their family kind of reuniting and their relationships kind of being mended, and they have a happy ending at the end of Season 4. I don't really know anything about how it's told or what's actually involved in it. I just know that it's a pretty nice side story that is told within Fortnite, and Jailbreak could have easily taken some notes from that, but they just don't, because Badimo doesn't know anything about storytelling, so I don't know why they even try doing anything like this. But whatever, the story's bad. I can excuse it if the gameplay we get is somewhat good. I just really don't care at this point. Jailbreak has disappointed me so much, I just want something good at this point. Oh, we're getting a boss fight. Oh, this could be sick. So yeah, this year's winter update is doing a boss fight. Kind of intriguing, huh? It's very different than Mad City's attempt at boss fights, where those are treated more as events that give you a vehicle reward, but this is like an actual robbery that you can replay time and time again, which is kind of cool. And so, on December 16th, 2022, we would be unveiled to the mansion, Jailbreak's first ever boss fight. So how exactly do you rob the mansion? Well, first of all, you would need an invite to the mansion that the CEO gives you upon completing an airdrop. Oh god, you need to do one of these? Alright, already docking points for that because I don't want to be forced to do an airdrop because those suck. What you then need to do is go to the mansion during nighttime and go into the elevator to be put into the CEO arena. I mean, there is quote-unquote platforming before then, but it's so piss poor that it isn't even worth mentioning. And once you actually get into the CEO's office, you are first met with a bunch of meaningless dialogue, and then a wave of NPCs. God, can this not get worse? I want to have fun here. I want to enjoy this. All you really need to do to get the NPCs out of your way is just to throw grenades at the door they come out of once you shoot the CEO. It is pretty simple. And after that, you fight the big boy himself, the CEO. So what does he actually do? Well, he can do a few things, such as using his metal arm to home in on you and attack you straight, use his arm to fire a laser beam at you, use whistle callouts to activate things like spotlights that slow you down or multiple death beams, or spawn in more NPCs. It is also important to note that in the CEO's arena, there are walls that can come up in between the distance of you and the CEO as you shoot him. Depending on where you are, once you shoot the CEO, a wall will come up, and that's basically your only form of cover within this boss fight. They're pretty useful for defending yourself against NPC bullets and the various attacks that the CEO throws at you. And... he doesn't really do much of anything else. I guess he does use a purple blast attack that just ragdolls you and heals himself. But overall, that's all he does, and the way to damage him is just shooting him. He is a bullet sponge. I guess it is better to hit him in the head to get some headshot damage, but other than that, that's it. There is nothing exciting about this boss fight whatsoever. There is no spectacle to facilitate this boss fight fully to distract you from how boring and nothing the gameplay is. There is no special cutscene associated with the fight, and the music that it does have is honestly pretty boring for a boss fight, and it doesn't accentuate any semblance of hype whatsoever. This boss fight is overall very bone dry. It is literally just you shooting at this cardboard cutout while you sometimes dodge the little arsenal that he has. In a lot of ways, you can simplify this boss fight a ton by just standing still and shooting the CEO, while making a left-to-right adjustment to take cover for his attacks. This sucks. This just sucks. I don't like this boss fight one bit. And a lot of my perspective comes from the games that I've played before that have way better boss fights. You know, things like Sonic Frontiers that literally came out a month before this update, Metal Gear Rising, as I said before, The Binding of Isaac, Terraria, Neon White, Portal, Doom, Bayonetta, and even games that I've played after the fact, like Freedom Planet 1 and 2, Spark 3, and Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. And hell, I'd say some of the boss fights from Mad City eclipse the CEO in a lot of ways, which is kind of embarrassing. At least with Mad City's boss fights, those things gave one hell of a challenge, while as here, there is a learning curve, but once you've done it enough times, you can do it so easily, and it's just not fun. The CEO boss fight also just goes against the fundamental principles of what a boss fight should be in a video game. You know, the penultimate challenge that makes you use all of the skills you learned in the game up until now. You can't really take advantage of cool combat tech in the fight, like the force field launcher isn't really that useful other than for healing during the fight. And other than that, and grenades, really the only weapon you actually need is a pistol to win the fight, which is just dumb. And you don't really use any of the knowledge you've gathered from doing other robberies or any other things in the game to use in the fight, which kind of just, again, goes against what a boss fight should be in a video game. If you think about it, this is not a boss fight. This is just a really boring and mundane combat arena. And if I'm gonna be honest, when I compare this to other games with much better combat mechanics and shooting mechanics at that, this just distracts from what makes Jailbreak fun in my opinion, because if I'm gonna be real, combat in Jailbreak is not really that fun. I've played many other games where the combat is much more snappy and responsive and fluid and fun. And I've had discussions with friends about this before, but just the way that Jailbreak's combat is developed is kind of just straight up wrong compared to other games. The combat is simply just not a part of Jailbreak's core widespread appeal for most players, and for some reason this boss fight emphasizes that very weak part of the game, and it very much suffers because of that. And when you think about it like that, Jailbreak does not need a boss fight, and at that, most games out there don't need a boss fight, because in most cases, they just end up distracting from the core gameplay and the gameplay that makes the game fun. If you want a more in-depth look as to why most games probably should not have boss fights, I do recommend Pariah695's video on why platformers should probably not have boss fights. And this also has the same issue as airdrops because it is also very punishing if you don't have a team with you. If you don't know what to do solo. If you don't know that grenades are the way to take down that first wave of NPCs, you are going to be demolished. And like those airdrop NPCs, this is another feature that emphasizes and straight up forces teamwork. There is a reason why it straight up tells you that there is a max limit for how many people can enter the CEO boss fight. The game is straight up telling you that, hey, you should probably have 2 other people with you doing this fight, but if you know what you're doing, you don't actually need anyone else, but for the average player, they're not gonna know that, and it's gonna suck for them. And if you're gonna say that, duh, it's supposed to teach them that this boss fight emphasizes teamwork, that's not the issue. The issue is that teamwork has never been a core part of Jailbreak gameplay until now, where it is legit just being forced, and it sucks. You combine all these facts of the CEO being a boring-ass fight with not a lot going on, and it forcing teamwork when teamwork has not really been a part of core Jailbreak gameplay, this boss fight 100% sucks and is officially my least favorite robbery in the game. Well, at least it gives double Hyperchromes. Oh yeah, double the Hyperchrome chance for this robbery. Oh yeah, that makes it so much better. And it also gives you other types of rewards from the mansion bonus roll, which I could not care less about because the resources that required these to be added could have been diverted to the actual boss fight, because it was revealed on Twitter long ago that this boss fight was not fucking tested for shit. This had 4 days of QA testing. 4 fucking days! I guess that explains why this boss is also buggy as all balls. You know what I said about the walls that come up in between the distance of you shooting the CEO and the CEO itself? Yeah, sometimes your only mode of cover in the boss fight can't even fucking work, because I have had so many occasions of these walls just not doing their goddamn job that it is just so fucking baffling. I don't know what is going wrong in the game's code for things like this to happen, but clearly it has something to do with the 4 goddamn motherfucking days of QA testing that this boss fight had. Couple that with the other frustrating experiences I've had with Jailbreak's general buggy unfinishedness, and officially this is where I threw in the towel. I quit Jailbreak after this because I was just so fucking unsatisfied with how the game was being handled and how the game was generally unfinished that I just decided this is enough. I'm not gonna deal with this. I'm not doing Season 13, even though I love the Bandit to death. It's like the only Fast and Furious-like car in the game. I don't care. I don't want it. I don't want to play this game anymore. I want out. Badimo, if by some miracle you are watching this, or some tester at Badimo is watching this, how did the CEO end up the way it was? How in the hell is the CEO's lore some of the most uninteresting attempts at storytelling I've ever seen in any medium ever, and how is it one of the worst boss fights I've ever had to endure in a video game in my life? How did it end up like this? Like, Jesus H. Christ, I feel like Castle Miner Z tried harder than this, and that is just, oh god. And if you want to say that my distaste for the CEO comes from a skill issue, am I annoying you yet? Did I make my point clear? Can we just have a moment, please? Can we have a moment to have a little mini retrospective inside of the retrospective for a moment? Because looking back, there was only one objectively good update in this year, and that was the 5th anniversary update. And then the rest was really bad. Trading had some very terrible ramifications on how Bedemo was going to handle Jailbreak from here on out. Hyperchromes are just fucking awful, and then NPCs were a goddamn mistake. And now the CEO is one of the worst abominable things I've had to fucking witness in a video game, so what the hell? What happened to this game? It really has me thinking, if trading was not introduced into the game and did not cloud Bedemo's motivations and vision for Jailbreak, would that have resulted in a better CEO boss fight? Shit, maybe. That way Bedemo is not at all concerned about cosmetics for this update, and they can just worry about making the gameplay good in the video game. But it's really sad to see that Bedemo kinda doesn't care about Jailbreak's gameplay because they're more concerned about making money off of seasons and catering more towards the trading demographic for a reason that I could only guess. What happened to the Jailbreak that was infinitely more concerned about innovating the Roblox platform? What happened to the Jailbreak that was more concerned about being objectively a good game? I will tell you what happened, and what happened was that Jailbreak was gunned down in the streets for modern Jailbreak to take its place. Modern Jailbreak is not concerned about being a good game. Modern Jailbreak is not concerned about innovating the Roblox platform. Modern Jailbreak is more concerned about making money and pushing out updates in a very buggy and unfinished state. Modern Jailbreak will ignore valid criticism coming their way, and they will ignore what testers say about the update before it comes out. Modern Jailbreak does not care about Jailbreak. Modern Jailbreak does not care about you one fucking bit. The once great community to developer interaction is completely gone now. It is now lost to time, and now we are left with a husk of what it once was. And it's really bad. The 5th anniversary update was a mere illusion to distract us from what was to come, because what was to come was utter dog shit that is not worth your time. Trading had some very shitty ramifications. Hyperchromes are shit and not worth your time. Airdrops are shit and not worth your time. The CEO is the dog shittiest of dog shit. I don't know how the hell it came out to be that way, but here it is for us to consume and assume that everything is fine and everything's okay. You might be hearing this and think to yourself that, man, these are some spicy hot takes, but really, I think these had some major ramifications on the overall performance of Jailbreak. A lot of these updates are not well received. A lot of people, surprisingly, do not like the CEO boss fight. A lot of people don't like airdrops, and a ton of people do not like hyperchromes. A lot of what happened in 2022 is generally perceived to be very game-changing, which, yes, is true, but in my opinion, it was all for the worst. At this point, during the end of 2022, I had zero faith in Bedemo. I had zero faith that they would come out with a quality update. There was no amount of giving them the benefit of the doubt or setting our expectations very low to save my faith in these developers, because they've shown me that they are very incapable of providing quality products. And they've also shown me that they don't really care about the part of the audience that I'm a part of. The part of the audience that likes the video game and wants it to be better. I feel like if Bedemo truly cared about Jailbreak, none of this would have happened. The CEO would not have been so shit, Hyperchromes would not exist, and trading would not have so many deadly ramifications for the game's future. And frankly, as I'm making this video, I am very tired. I don't want to revisit this point in Jailbreak's history because it's so mentally stressful, and at the time, the game's quality was very dire. My entire point of making this Jailbreak retrospective video series is just to be heard out, for people to understand where I'm coming from, for people to maybe understand why I'm so harsh against Bedemo and the decisions they've made with Jailbreak through the years. I want my thoughts and opinions to be justified as much as the next person. It's just that a lot of my thoughts have not been heard out quite well. This community has a very bad problem of silencing those who go against the norm. Those who have been disappointed and are very vocal about their disappointment towards Jailbreak are often silenced because, oh, you have your expectations way too high or whatnot. And I mean, of course we have our expectations set that high. Just look at the things that Bedemo has accomplished. Just look at things like the power plant, or the live event, or 2021 5 Days of Vehicles, or March 2020's update, and even a lot of the updates that happened during 2017 and 2018 Jailbreak. Updates like this don't just leave us satisfied, they give us hope that Bedemo can give us something greater. And when they give us updates that are poorly thought out and are very unfinished and aren't ready to be published, it leaves an impression, and it's gonna leave people dissatisfied, and in a lot of cases, people are gonna stop caring about Jailbreak. And I don't think anyone wants that. I think we all want people to keep on caring about Jailbreak. I think we all want Bedemo to see the support that we give them to fuel the motivation to get better updates. But I did not want 2022 to end like this. It started off with so much promise, but then it just fumbled at the end so hard that this is the worst year for Jailbreak, easily. However, 2023, even with its issues, did pleasantly surprise me.
Stop threatening my family!